Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. I don't know if you can see me, I probably just look like a floating head surrounded by beige today. But it's cold in Sydney and I'm all rugged up, so they'll have to apologise the fact that I'm basically just blending into the wall in the chair tonight. So guys, I wanted to introduce something that I've wanted to do on this channel for a while for Warrior Wednesdays, and that is a little bit of myth busting with eating disorders and diet culture. I think we all know too well that there is just a lot of misinformation and there's still a huge stigma out there attached to mental illnesses, but specifically eating disorders. I feel like depression and bipolar are much more out in the light and more socially acceptable to discuss, even though there's a long way to go, do not get me wrong. And eating disorders are just sort of left behind, even though it has the highest mortality rate of all mental illnesses. It just does not get the attention or the discussion around it that it deserves. And you can say that I'm coming from a biased place because I've experienced it, but the statistics are on the increase, and the fact that it already has the highest mortality rate, my goodness, how much worse can it get? So the first myth we're going to talk about today is the fact that eating disorders are for attention. There is this horrible, horrible view of eating disorders that is so outdated and so incorrect that it is a vanity issue, or it's a self-indulgent issue, or it's a cry for attention. There's something kind of sexist about it as well, that, you know, this mental illness is reduced to wanting to be pretty and wanting to be thin. And don't get me wrong, I think there are absolutely environmental factors that contribute to people ending up with eating disorders, but it's only a percentage of it. That's what's so complicated about this mental illness, is that there's environmental factors, there's genetic factors. For me, it was such a mess of things. It was where my life was heading at the time. It was my need for control. It was my desire to be perfect, because that I could control. And then I felt as though if I were thin enough and pretty enough and perfect enough, then I could be untouchable. So there is an element of that, I get that, but to boil down something that is so dangerous, that is basically at this point a crisis in our mental health system, given how underfunded and how it's not taken seriously, it is offensive at this point to still be reducing this to a vanity issue. And I get very, very annoyed when there is a incredibly thin model walking down a runway, or there's somebody in the public eye who everybody is faux concerned for, because we talk about it for a few days, we make it specific to that person, and then we don't talk about what that represents, that there are a multitude of people who are suffering in that way, who may not look like what the media and society believe eating disorders look like. And that emaciated look only represents 3% of people who suffer from eating disorders. So the fact that people think that it's about wanting to be thin and wanting to be beautiful and wanting to be superior, don't even understand that that stereotypical look isn't even the stereotype, because it's not representative of the majority. As when you look at the statistics where people suffer from bulimia, people who have bulimia fluctuate only slightly. They really maintain what looks like a normal weight, but they're incredibly, incredibly ill. So the fact that people say that it's for vanity is ridiculous, particularly when you look at people who have binge eating disorder and in so many cases are overweight or obese, which is going so against that idea of the emaciated thin woman and what she's trying to pursue in that vain attempt to be beautiful and thin, then clearly that doesn't fit into that narrative. What frustrates me most about this myth and this false assumption is that it could not be further from the truth. There is no more secretive illness, mental illness experience than living in an eating disorder. The average duration of starting eating disorder behavior and going in until you go and get help is 4 years. That's the average. It takes 4 years for people to go into treatment, which means that they're spending years and years and years and years hiding and being secretive and trying to conceal their illness. which goes against the grain of this assumption that it is for attention seeking or that it is in the pursuit of vanity or an aesthetic. I know for myself personally, it was 6 years, and there was some suspicion from those who were really, really, really close to me. But other than that, until I started posting on my Facebook page very recently this year about my experience when I went to run for the half marathon and was raising money and was like, well, I'm gonna have to out myself on my personal Facebook, the majority of people had no idea, with the exception of a couple of very close friends and my family. They had no idea. And in talking to you guys, that's your experience as well, is that we do take it inward, that we do hide it and conceal it. And you can see that again and again and again. It's the same pattern. It's people trying to internalize their pain, minimize their impact on other people, become as invisible as possible and fade into the background. So I don't know what it is that drives this myth, that drives this stereotype, this offensive stereotype, I should say, but it is so far from what the actual experience of an eating disorder is. And I think part of it is that we glamorize eating disorders, which is revolting. And whether or not that's because we are obsessed with thin and we are obsessed with young and we are obsessed with tragedy, really, and sort of have just accepted it as a norm. And people don't get as angry about it as I want them to. There isn't one single person I've engaged with in this community or on the Tumblr community or anyone I've spoken to in all the time that I've been doing this who has ever said to me that it was purely about wanting to be thin or that it was purely about wanting attention. I think when you're harming yourself and hurting yourself subconsciously in some way, it's calling out for attention, it's calling out for help when you aren't equipped to do it for yourself. That's, like I said, it's so multifaceted. That's one component, just like genetics are a component. It's a percentage of it, but I never for 1 second consciously thought during my eating disorder, this is a great way to get people to notice me. It was so the opposite. I disconnected myself from so many people and robbed myself of so many experiences because I wouldn't engage with people, particularly when it involved food, or if I thought that people were going to pick up on my behaviors and call me out and try to get me help. And it was absolutely not my instinct to go and flaunt my illness in front of people. And from what you guys have told me, it's the same thing that you experience. So guys, let me know what you think about the myth that eating disorders are for attention or vanity. Shout out in the comments below. Let me know if you've ever had a conversation with someone who has just had absolutely no idea what they're talking about when it comes to the causes or the motivations of people who suffer from eating disorders. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to put a link to the giveaway video because that is still open for the next week and a half for you to put in your submissions to win that beautiful little prize. Come and find me on Instagram and Twitter under What Mia Did Next. All those links in the description box below as well. I'll see you guys this weekend for a fun video we're going to be doing. And I think that I may have somebody who will be starring alongside me. Anyway, guys, I'll see you at the end of the week. In the meantime, as always, much love and take care. Bye, guys.